Good afternoon, and thank you so much for tuning in to this segment of Sister Thea Bowman's Kitchen. This program was began by Boston College Campus Ministry, and this series, Preaching from Sister Thea's Kitchen, is a platform that focuses on and amplifies Black voices here at Boston College through the intersection of scripture and Ignatian spirituality with racial justice. The series is named after the servant of God, Sister Thea Bowman, who is also the namesake of BC's Bowman-Ahana Intercultural Center, and she was known for integrating the Catholic tradition with Black spirituality. I'm excited to talk to you today, and I want to begin with something that we call survivor acknowledgement. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and here across the world, actually, in the world, 1 in 3 women will be sexually assaulted. Here on college campuses, 1 in 5 women will be sexually assaulted. And there are other statistics also that apply to men and boys and transgender people, but I'm focusing on those two today because it's an area that I have thought about a lot in my life. I hate sexual assault. Sexual Assault Awareness Month is an annual campaign to raise public awareness about sexual assault and educate communities and individuals on how to prevent sexual violence. Here at Boston College, the Women's Center recognized it as Care Week, concerned about rape education. This month is always on my radar because I hate sexual assault. I hate sexual violence. I hate gender-based violence. I hate rape. I hate incest. I hate sexual abuse. I hate street harassment. I hate sexual harassment. I hate it all, and it makes me angry. I have a pastor and a mentor who once said to me, if you hate something, if something makes you angry, ask God what you should do about it. In my experience, the things that you hate, the things that really make you angry, can be agents and engines of our social justice work. There is a productive relationship between anger and justice. And by productive, I mean that our anger is a necessary ingredient in and often the foundation of our justice work. Righteous anger helps us to channel our rage into action. Our anger, properly channeled, can serve the purpose for change. In her landmark essay, The Uses of Anger, the Black feminist poet Audre Lorde explains that fear and anger can help to bring about change. She writes, quote, I want to speak about anger, my anger, and what I have learned from my travels through its dominions. Every woman has a well-stocked arsenal of anger, potentially useful against those oppressions, personal and institutional, which brought our anger into being, end quote. Beloved, I can tell you that I have an arsenal as well, an arsenal of oppressions that I have witnessed, that I have experienced, that are both personal and institutional, and that make me angry. And so I want to talk about anger today and how we can use that anger in our justice work. Also because throughout the Bible, there are so many examples of anger as a productive force. We saw what happened when Jesus was turning tables in the temple when he was angry. All throughout the book of Isaiah, we hear about the wrath of God, and we read and study and learn about what this anger, this righteous anger, can do to transform our world. Today I'm going to share one story only from a passage in Nehemiah, which to me offers an example of what can happen when we experience anger, we feel our anger, and then we decide to do something about it. So Nehemiah was a Jewish leader who supervised the rebuilding of the walls, and these walls needed to be rebuilt to protect the Jewish people from their enemies. I'm going to read a passage from what's happening while they're building the walls, because again, I think that it's a great model for organizing and a great model for what we can do when we experience anger. I'm reading from Nehemiah chapter 5, verses 1 to 13. About this time, some of the men and their wives raised a cry of protest against their fellow Jews. They were saying, "We have such large families, we need more food to survive." Others said, "We have mortgaged our fields, vineyards, and homes to get food during the famine." And others said, we have had to borrow money on our fields and vineyards to pay our taxes. We belong to the same family as those who are wealthy, and our children are just like theirs. Yet we must sell our children into slavery just to get enough money to live. We have already sold some of our daughters, and we are helpless to do anything about it, for our fields and vineyards are already mortgaged to others. And now this is Nehemiah talking. When I heard their complaints, I was very angry. After thinking it over, I spoke out against these nobles and officials. I told them, you are hurting your own relatives by charging interest when they borrow money. Then I called a public meeting to deal with the problem. At the meeting, I said to them, we are doing all we can to redeem our Jewish relatives who have had to sell themselves to foreigners, but you are selling them back into slavery again. How often must we redeem them? And they had nothing to say in their defense. Then I pressed further. What you are doing is not right. Should you not walk in the fear of God in order to avoid being mocked by enemy nations? I myself, as well as my brothers and my workers, have been lending the people money and grain, but now let us stop this business of charging interest. You must restore their fields, vineyards, olive groves, and homes to them this very day, and repay the interest you charge them when you lent them the money, grain, new wine, and olive oil. They replied, we will give back everything and demand nothing more from the people. We will do as you say. Then I called the high priests and the nobles and the officials to swear to do what they promised. I shook out the folds of my robe and I said, if you fail to keep your promise, may God shake you like this from your homes and from your property. The whole assembly responded, amen. And they praised the Lord. And the people did as Nehemiah had promised. I love this so much because Nehemiah gets angry. Then he thinks it over, he decides to act, and then he becomes an advocate who names the injustice and who intervenes. He comes up with a plan. He not only says to them, what you are doing is not right. When they don't respond, he presses further. So Nehemiah takes that anger at injustice and intervenes. He becomes an advocate. What also strikes me about Nehemiah is that his anger is coupled with compassion for the people. Now, when I think about compassion, I think always about the example of Jesus in the New Testament, because there's this beautiful Greek word that one of my dearest friends, the Reverend Kaji Dosha, first told me about, and the word is called esplashaniste, and I don't speak Greek, so I don't pronounce it well. But this word means to be moved in your inner parts, to be moved in your bowels, to be moved in your guts, to feel compassion. It's the strongest possible word for compassion, and in the Gospels, it's used to describe Jesus. The word is always accompanied by a verb, underscoring that compassion. What moves in your gut is inherently linked to action, right? So when we think about compassion, it must be coupled with action. According to Adele Calhoun in the Spiritual Disciplines, she writes, quote, compassion is a call to action, to healing, and to restoration. I think about Jesus' compassion a lot because it has inspired me both personally and professionally. To be a person of compassion is a person who cares about justice and understands that in order for justice to advance, we need action. Hebrews 13:3 says, remember those who are suffering as though you yourselves were suffering. To me, the greatest example of compassion for human suffering was that which led Jesus Christ into action. He had compassion on people because they were like sheep without a shepherd, so he taught them. He had a compassion on the widow whose son who died, so he raised the young man from the dead. He had compassion on the woman with the issue of blood, so he healed her and restored her in the community. He tells the story of the Samaritan whose compassion moves him to action and helps the man left on the side of the road. Our God, my Jesus, is a God of compassion. And I know that compassion, that paying attention to your gut, paying attention to what angers you, paying attention to the things that you hate can change and transform how we move in this world, because that has been my own experience in my life. When one of my best friends told me that she was a rape survivor, my gut moved, and I knew that there must be something I had to do about it. I began the long journey of grappling with the issue of gender-based violence, and specifically violence against Black women and girls, as an academic, as an advocate, and as an activist. As a graduate student, I trained at the Boston Area Rape Crisis Center, and then I began as a founding board member of A Long Walk Home, a nonprofit that uses the arts to empower young people to end violence against women and girls. My first book, Conflict Bodies, The Politics of Rape Representation in the Francophone Imaginary, examines how cultural production reflects challenges and attempts to transform a global rape culture. And I regularly teach a class in the core, one of my favorite classes to teach, with my colleague, the sociologist Sean McGuffey. And that class is entitled Where Hashtag Black Lives Matter Meets Hashtag Me Too, Violence and Representation in the African Diaspora. Our goal with the class is to transform rape culture and to encourage students to become transformers themselves. This is also why my hatred and my anger, my feeling in my gut, my moving in my gut around the issue of sexual violence is why I also joined a group called Shatter the Silence with other members of different faith communities here in Boston to figure out how the church can respond to sexual victimization and how the church can end sexual victimization, because this is where the work of justice begins. So my question to you: what makes you angry? What do you hate? What moves your gut? What moves your bowels? Maybe it's anti-Black racism. Perhaps it is anti-Asian hate. Perhaps it's police brutality. Maybe it's sexual violence. Maybe it's prison abolition. Maybe it's mass incarceration. Maybe it is homelessness. Maybe it is poverty. Maybe it is the refugee crisis, gun violence, cancer, income inequality. Unfortunately, there are many to choose from because the harvest is plentiful. And we need laborers in this vineyard who are thoughtful and who are committed and who want to channel their anger into action in order to transform this vineyard. So I invite you, I encourage you actually, to think about this as an invitation. Maybe you want to give to an organization like A Long Walk Home. You can find our website at www.alongwalkhome.com. Maybe you want to volunteer for the Boston Area Rape Crisis Center. Maybe you want to go to RAINN.org, RAINN.org, and learn more about some of those statistics about sexual violence and volunteer, see how you can help a friend. Or maybe the next time someone discloses to you, you can just believe them and you can walk with them in their journey. There's so much that we can do. Whatever it is, you have to feel your anger. You have to think on it. You have to pay attention to your gut and to your bowels. And then you have to act. Thank you so much. And the last thing I'll say, because I didn't say it in the beginning, is that this place that represents sanctuary to me is actually the African and African Diaspora Studies Program office. And I'm here in our conference room, and I'm standing right in front of a mural that my students from the fall of 2020 made for our class, where hashtag Black Lives Matter meets hashtag Me Too. And they made this mural, which features the three founders of the Black Lives Matter movement alongside the founder of the Me Too movement. So we have Tarana Burke, we have Alicia Garza, Opal Tometi, and Patrice Cullors, and they're all here with their fists raised. And above them it says, "Go forth and set the world aflame." And I bid you to do the same in relation to racial justice, sexual violence, whatever injustice it is that moves your gut. Thank you.